it's officially Taurus season, which makes this Taurus very happy. And the moon is in Aries, which now completes that cycle. So the moon went from Aries, now it's going into Taurus, soon it will be in Gemini, and then it will move into Cancer, then we'll go into Leo, then we'll go to Virgo, then we'll go to Libra again, then we'll go to Scorpio, Sagittarius, Capricorn, Aquarius, Pisces, and then Aries starts the wheel again. What I wanted to share just a little bit today with you is a little bit of me, because Aries is all about the self, and so I haven't really taken very much time to introduce myself. I really began my Instagram channel just as a way to share my recipes, because switching into a plant-based diet, that was not an easy switch to make. I did not make the switch because of a desire to save animals or anything. I loved meat and I loved the way it tasted. There was no way I could ever see myself giving that up. But what happened was I had already started juicing. Somebody suggested that I watch this movie called Cowspiracy, because after noticing how environmental I was, to this person's surprise, I also ate meat. But because they did not, they were just sharing their knowledge with me, which was, check out this movie, it might, interest you. So I watched the movie Cowspiracy. By the end of it, I did not realize how much of an environmental impact we can have by just not eating meat, even if it's for just a couple meals out of the day, a couple meals during the week, more meals during the month. Like, if you can just start integrating more plants into your diet, you'll have better health in general. So I was not opposed to making the switch, and I also loved culinary arts, so I loved the idea of coming up with a whole bunch of new fabulous recipes, so I just dove right in. But it is not safe to just switch into a new diet, and I knew that. So what I did was that, even though I knew I wasn't making the right decision of how to do it, I knew that I was going to be able to come back, take the information and data, because I know that I have a lot more information about health and wellness and nutrition and diet than the average person, because of all the schooling that I've had. I've learned a lot about it along the way. And so I thought that if it was hard for me to make that switch safely, and having the right amounts of protein and carbohydrates and fats, and making sure that you eat enough during the day, because you don't get as much caloric intake, so you have to eat more during, there's just a lot of different things. So meal planning and new recipes, and there was just a lot. And I also had a full-time practice, and I also have a dog who gets a walk 3 times because he's the best. I love my dog. Anyway, love that guy. So it's a lot, and I knew that if I was having a difficult time with it, that maybe it would be a benefit. So anyway, I have a pretty interesting story, and so I'm not going to be able to get it all out in like one video, but I do want to get to know you better, so I will share more about myself as I continue to do more of these videos. For now, though, I wanted to just share why I love astrology so much. When I found out about astrology, I had already been introduced to it because my mom was really into astrology, and she always was doing my yearly predictions for my birthday and stuff, and it was always really straight on most of the time when I would read it, and so that intrigued me, like, just wanting to understand more about the science, but I never really got into it. And so it was later in my life, in 2015, when I was having my Saturn return, that I met somebody who was able to teach me the key for astrology, as far as being able to rewrite my narrative, rewrite scripts, rewrite my programming, recreate my reality. Astrology, hands down, the most powerful experience that I have ever encountered. And when you are able to recreate your story and your narrative so much that you begin to create a new relationship with yourself and with other people, it really did so much for me, because at that time I had gone through a lot of self-discovery work. I have done a lot to evolve as a human being, spiritually, mentally, emotionally, physically, and that's actually how I began my journey, was because I was in a car accident when I was 17. Somebody ran a red light and hit me, and so I started this pain, seeking somebody to help me get out of pain, physical pain. But I had a whole lot of emotional pain, I had a whole lot of mental pain, I had a whole lot of chemical pain, and I have never found anything to be quite like my experience with astrology. So when I started seeking my physical pain to be relieved, it of course led me down a much more grand path than I could have ever imagined. I had neck pain and back pain for a really, really long time before I was able to find any relief, and my story is very long. If you want the full version, you can go to this other video, and that video will explain to you all about my chiropractic journey and like how I got into what it was that I was doing. I just want to make these videos really short because I value your time and I appreciate the time that you share with me. So I just want to make these videos quick, but I want to give you a lot. So for now, I got relief from a chiropractor after having been to a chiropractor my whole life, and that chiropractor taught me something that I had never really understood about chiropractic, which was the fact that you heal from above down, inside out, because your nervous system is actually what is relaying all of the healing messages throughout your entire body. And so when there's pressure on your nervous system isn't able to thrive and function optimally. So it leads to dysfunction, and whenever there is dysfunction, it eventually leads to dis-ease in the system. So chiropractic is a very gentle way to take stress off of the system so that it can function more optimally. When I got into this gentleman's office, Dr. Jason Jumper, he taught me about what innate intelligence was, that there was this intelligence within us that flowed through our nervous system. And that made so much sense to me because I hadn't been able to get any relief from any sort of therapy. I went to everything. I tried massage, I tried acupuncture, I tried rolfing, yoga, physical therapy, I tried everything. Nothing helped. So when this person was able to give me a little bit of relief, I was so grateful, and I was going to his practice all the time, and I kept hearing about all of these patients that he had helped get better, getting people out of wheelchairs, getting people out of like these really intense health conditions. It really inspired me to want to help others in the way that I was getting help. So I asked him where he would go if he went to chiropractic school again, and he told me to go to Life West Chiropractic School. I went there, and halfway through the program, I was actually having worse neck pain and back pain because when you're a student in school, you typically practice on each other, and that means you get over-adjusted and adjusted on wrong time, wrong place. And so when I was halfway through the program, I was ready to drop out because I was getting worse. And how can you sell something that you don't believe in? So I was really unmotivated and didn't want to go to school anymore. And I had a friend see me in the hall and, looking all distressed. He asked me what was wrong, and I explained to him that I was in pain and didn't know what I was going to do, and I've already, so in debt from going to school halfway through it, and, what am I going to do? And he is the one who suggests that I get an upper cervical adjustment to the upper cervical part of my spine. That changed my life. It took me 6 months to go because I'm a stubborn bull. I eventually ended up going, and I'm so grateful that I did because I got my atlas adjusted and woke up the next morning after being in pain for 9 years, like on a scale of 0 to 10, I was at an 8 constantly. So to be able to have that taken away from just having my, this top bone of my neck adjusted completely changed my life. So after that, I decided, I went like super gung-ho. I learned everything that I possibly could. I started my own club for all of the upper cervical techniques. I was super into it. And what ended up happening for me is that as I was learning astrology, fast forward, now I'm practicing all sorts of different upper cervical techniques. I graduated in 2012, and then I land in Austin, Texas, and I am working. I associate for a year in somebody's practice, then I'm an independent contractor in another person's office. 2014, I own my own practice. And I'm practicing Nuka, upper cervical, chiropractic, and I love it. And I am having, a lot of patients that are getting so much better, and I'm serving the community. But for me, I had a choice to make, which was I own my own company, I own my own business. The overhead was ridiculously expensive because I had a very expensive spot in Austin on South 1st Street, and I had a digital x-ray machine, and so I was serving people, but it was at a very, very high cost to my own time and energy. So I had made my escape route, which a lot of doctors do, which is build your practice up, and then you bring in new recruits, and then you eventually are just a manager and you oversee things and you don't take on so many patients. It's the normal, cycle, and I figured I could do it in 5 years, and I was well on track to where in the first 7 months I was already hiring my first doctor. So practice was going great, and lots of people were getting well, and we had an amazing practice, and I miss everybody very much and love everybody that I got to work with, and feel so honored and so grateful for all of those people's lives that I got to be a part of. For me, what was going on was that I'm in my practice, things are going well, I'm learning astrology, I'm evolving, I don't eat meat, I don't drink alcohol anymore, things are going great. And things were just starting to get comfortable, and then boom, Saturn return comes and nudges me back onto my path. Saturn comes in and says, nope, you still need more work, more learning, more understanding. So what does it happen? A huge devastating thing happens in my family. I have to go home to Colorado, and my practice when I return later is completely different. And so what I learned from the experience of leaving my practice for a while and coming back was that I actually had been working very, very hard to create a space for people to come in where they could access resources and tools and modalities that would help them. But I didn't realize what I was really creating was a situation that was no different than what I was trying to create a solution for, which was the alternative model, where you would go and see an allopathic practitioner of any sort, and they would give you some attention for some money, and then you would leave and then hopefully not have to go back. Well, the experience that I created in my space was something that I was hoping was different, but in reality it wasn't very much different. It was taking people who were vulnerable already and asking them to pay me money to do something that was going to help them, but it was going to also make them reliant on me for that solution. So what ended up happening when I left was that when I came back, everybody was a little bit upset that I had not been able to manage their pain for them while I was gone. So when I came back and I was understanding that that's what I had created in that space, especially in a time where I was in a lot of pain emotionally, dealing with what had happened to my family back home, it was really conflicting. And as far as like holistic healing goes, you're looking at the whole thing, so really was disheartening to have to accept and acknowledge the fact that I had created something that was anti the outcome that I wanted to have people experience. So it was really on me to create a solution if I could. So what I ended up doing was I completely changed my entire strategy for practice. I have always been into evolution of the self. Since I was a young girl, I've always been doing my own healing work. You just don't come out of being raised by two people that are super connected to holistic healing. I grew up in a family raised by a mother who is, into astrology and herbs and the garden and crystals, and she's an esthetician and a beautician, and she owns her own salon, and a father who's an acupressure massage therapist and a surfer and a musician. So holistic healing was always something that was really normal and natural to me. And when you get into holistic healing, you start basically the path towards ascension. And for me, it was that car accident. It was pain. Pain was my motivation towards ascension, like most other people's is. But as I was continuing to do my own healing practices, like I was mentioning, I had always grown up with this holistic understanding that we have the potential of healing ourselves. So for me, it was really conflicting going to school because I was being trained to understand that I was necessary in somebody's healing process because I could adjust their bones in a way that they could not without me. So I went to school and believed it, and I went into practice and believed it and helped a lot of people. And when I was in practice, I always had this inner confliction that I felt we didn't need somebody to intervene in order for us to heal. The type of chiropractic that I did was upper cervical chiropractic, so the goal of the work is to not adjust you every single time that you come in. The goal of the work is for you to hold your adjustment, and that made sense to me. That if I could just help you maintain a correction, then that made sense to me. Going through chiropractic school, you were trained that you can't adjust yourself, and I am not going to say that you can or cannot. I'm just going to share my experience, which was that the more art, the more music that I made, the more I sang, the more I did yoga, the more plant-based food that I ate, the higher vibration that I began to emanate. I started getting more intuitive, and I found myself breathing one day, and I found myself, being guided to this pose, and I found myself in triangle pose, and I was deep into this stretch and just kind of all of a sudden realized that I was in triangle pose, and all of a sudden my atlas adjusted itself, and I just kind of whoa, okay, self-check really quick, make sure, did I just hurt myself? Because I honestly, at that point in time, had no idea that the atlas could be corrected by any other means other than me doing a specific adjustment, or one of my colleagues doing a specific adjustment to that area of the spine. So to my relief, honestly, I figured out that, okay, well, if I can adjust myself, then there must be a way that I can communicate with basis of understanding of human anatomy and physiology and the way that the spine works, the way biomechanics work, the way the spine moves and everything. And then I tried to understand how I could take my experience and be able to translate it to the person. So because of my holistic background and because of just my practices, I just kept experimenting with people, just be in the space with my clients that would, everybody was so incredibly open to my process as I was trying to understand what was happening, because in my body I was experiencing this, and I wanted other people to be able to do it so that I could just maybe assess them and help them figure out how to adjust themselves, and then that would be the transition. At that point I wasn't sure, I just knew that I could get out of being the middleman between them having spinal health and me being the doctor. Like, I didn't want to facilitate that anymore. I just wanted to educate and then let them be able to take the wheel and steer. So I basically experimented with clients for a while, just explaining to them what I was experiencing, and it was working. And I had gotten to a point where I had quite a few clients that we were able to do this communication thing. They were able to do a few things, and then they were feeling in alignment. The checks were coming out that they were in alignment. So what happened next was that I had a client come in for the first time for their new patient exam, and what we did was take x-rays on their upper cervical spine when they would first come in, and what ended up happening was the light bulb on my x-ray machine burnt out. So to me, that was like the universe saying, hey, I think you've got the handle on this, like, you need to just go for it, like, you know what you're doing, just go for it. And so it was really cool because the person who came in that day, I explained to him that, hey, I want to try to do this thing, and if it doesn't work, then we can go and get a light bulb and, have this all fixed. And we can take x-rays and do the regular thing. And so he didn't want x-rays in the first place, so that was perfect because he didn't tell me that, but that worked out because he just was trying to get better. So if he could do it without the x-rays, that would be great. So I ended up working with him, and it was all just intuition. He did fantastic, and so from that point on, I just went full on helping with intuition rather than using my programmed brain for what I thought I was supposed to be doing based on what I was trained in my title. So this gets me to a book that really changed my life. I think that right now we're in a time where there's so much going on, and there's so much time that we've never had before to do the inner work. So that's really why I'm feeling internally driven to share what it is that I've been working on now and not procrastinate anymore or put it off. Because I've had a lot going for a while, and I just haven't had that kick that I needed to get this going. Those Tauruses, we are slow to move, but when we move, we are on it for a long haul. So I have definitely stepped into it, and what I would like to share back to this book is a book that really changed a lot of stuff for me as far as being able to rewrite my programming. Astrology and this book and a few others, but this book in particular I want to mention just because of the times right now. We are a culture that doesn't understand very much that when we have a better relationship with ourselves and we feel safe being around ourselves, that will reflect back to us in our external environment. So what I feel the message that could be received from the experience that we're all having as a collective is that this isn't just one sign, but it is a big sign that if we're now legally needing to be distanced from each other, it's time that we need to get comfortable with ourselves, love ourselves 100% for everything. Sociopathy is rampant in our culture because we have this imbalance in career and family and with ourself, Aries, and Libra, others. So this is why I started teaching first the cross, the 4 quarters, because Aries, Libra, Cancer, and Capricorn are the 4 quarters is the cross, and it's important because it's the axis in which everything rotates. We just had the sun move into Taurus, so Aries is the beginning at 3:21, around there, the date 3:21. the sun moves into Aries, and that's the equinox, because this axis represents the equator. And then it goes into Aries, then it goes into Taurus, then it goes into Gemini, then it goes into Cancer, and then it goes into Leo, and Virgo, and Libra, and then Scorpio, and then Sagittarius, and then Capricorn, and then Aquarius, and then Pisces, and then Aries. So it goes all the way around, and the reason why I started at Aries is because now you know the cross. I do teach what I know about astrology, which is the key. So when you learn the key, you actually learn astrology, which removes me from being your astrologer. You become your own astrologer. I take myself out of the relationship. I just want to share the information, and then you process it and do what you need to do with it, because it is not my job to tell you how to live your life. I'm trying to figure out how to live my own life, and having Chiron and Gemini in my third house, I know what I'm here to do, and I'm here to share my experiences, specifically with how I have healed. So that's what I'm doing. I have a couple of different services that I want to share with you, so that if you are somebody who is, feeling like you're ready and have been for a long time, needing to make some changes and get a deeper understanding of who you are, I would love to work with you. What I do is I help you understand your astrology by looking at your natal chart, and then from there you can take that a couple different places with me, and that's super awesome right now to be talking about, because the new moon is in Taurus. Taurus energy comes from nature and it comes from earth, and so it's this very natural type of art and natural type of beauty, and it's all about pleasure. And so, for example, in passion, pleasure, indulgence, lust, luxury, art, beauty, harmony, all of these things come from this very, very natural place. And the more that we shove them down and repress them and do not let them fill us, then it comes out in perverted ways. If you just look inside where those parts of you, the sexual realms, are there, connect to them, heal them, understand them, because we are a culture that doesn't understand very much that when we have a better relationship with ourselves and we feel safe being around ourselves, that will reflect back to us in our external environment. There's just so much that we see in our collective, the amounts of imbalance with, gender and sex identities and sexual preferences and porn and child molestation, kidnapping, and there's sex trades, and there's just so much going on out there that if you have an issue with touch and sensuality and, being soft and sensual with yourself, take a bath. Go swim in a lake. Go lay in the grass on a blanket. Let the sun and the wind and the birds heal you. Connect. It's so important. And right now, I know that some of us can't go outside, but there's a bath, there's a shower, there's, putting lotions on yourself, incense, flowers, all of these things that can just really heal us and support us during this time. I feel that it's so important for us to take this time in the new moon in Taurus and be okay with ourselves. And in order to heal the imbalance that we are seeing in our external world, if we do some internal reflection around what is possibly scary about being with ourselves, then I see that a lot of good can become of this experience that we're in together. Which brings me back again to this book, narcissism. I just want to speak about it in the Aries perception, is that there's healthy narcissism, and then there's an extreme to both ends where you don't have any self-assertion and you just let everybody walk all over you and you don't take any action and you can't decide. And then when you're super, it's all about me and nobody else exists, and people suffer because I get my way. So it can go anywhere. But the sociopathy happens because you're not in alignment with your truth. You are doing something that compromises your integrity, that goes against your will, and that causes imbalance, and then that causes all these different types of mental schizophrenic episodes where you think it's okay to behave certain ways and creates it. So this is where the sociopathy comes in. A book came to me in practice. Now, I don't want to get into a whole storyline, but this book was really relevant to me, and I'm sure there's a lot of other women who would benefit from reading this book, but it's not just a feminine book. Like, I know the title makes it for women, but I mean, it's really just relevant to a lot of people. This is the book. Will I Ever Be Good Enough? Healing Daughters of Narcissistic Mothers. The reason why I bring this book up is because it changed so much for me, realizing that we are generations of feminine energy that have been squandered, which is the creative, generative, intuitive self. The logical, very analytical, success-oriented, career-oriented side of us has been forefront for a really long time, and the imbalances now allowing, like, it's coming up like, hey everybody, like, you need to spend time alone. And so right now we can get in balance with ourselves and heal some of these lineal problems that we have experienced. As it's so inherent in our genetic DNA that we can reprogram and recode right now if we do so choose to. So it's not easy. I recommend art. Making art became essential to my healing process because when you go through mental and emotional experiences as you do in a lifetime, it becomes really hard to process it all. And so without any sort of external reflection of what it is that you're dealing with from yourself, there was no way that I could have ever processed everything that I've been through. So I started creating more art in my own practice, and I started bringing that into my practice with my clients. And I realized that it was not only helping me, it was helping me be able to help others better, because it gave them permission to be a part of their own healing process in a new way, which was really incredible because I didn't realize that there was such a strong connection to being able to energetically release through creating art and helping somebody relieve pain. I actually started getting people coming in where I was no longer even doing a NUCA assessment. We were just creating art together, and the pain that they came in, because I am advertised as a chiropractic office, they would come in with pain, and we would go through this artistic experience, and they would have a release, and they would explain to me afterwards that their pain was gone. So I was experiencing a whole bunch of different energies coming in saying that, I needed to investigate this more. Because I grew up with a father who did acupressure my whole life, I already understood the power of healing without touch or with light touch, or, just healing in a different way. And so when I went to chiropractic school, I really was expecting to find a whole group of people who kind of had the same upbringing as I did, because I already felt so alone, like nobody understood what I understood about, our ability to heal ourselves in my world. And so when I finally got to grad school and chiropractic school, I finally thought I would be around a group of like-minded individuals. However, when I got to school, it was a lot different of an experience than I was expecting. So when I got out of school, I had all of this new programming and a lot of debt, and was already signed up to go and work in Austin, Texas for a doctor because I was hired 8 months before I graduated. So I went straight into it, got all the way through, straight to my own practice and everything. As I started getting more real with myself, I realized that there was a lot of things that I had taken out of the healing component of my practice, that when I started reintroducing them in my own practice, as I was doing my own healing, that meant that I had to get real with myself, which meant that my practice became much more real, which meant that I was really doing more work with people, spending more time, and giving them what I really felt like was going to help them not have to come and see me anymore, but become their own doctor. So I know that's a little alarming for a lot of people that especially are in this career field, but just bear with me. So I started actually bringing them, like, I brought art supplies, I brought music equipment, I brought incense, I brought yoga mats. Like, I turned my practice into my own healing space. And when I started bringing people through these different experiences, I realized that there was so much healing that was possible in those experiences, that I rebranded hands-on holistic healing to Holistic Healing Heart's Cool, where we would open up our heart and open up to art and let the pain come through. Helping people use different colors in order to associate where they were in their emotional state. If you are interested in what I'm talking about, it's what I'm leading up to explaining, is that I have a lot to share and I've been very quiet, and this whole, has really pushed me to, I can't be quiet anymore. I feel that I learned so much in my practice, and I realized that when I was in my practice, the biggest asset to my entire practice was me being me. It wasn't what I was doing with the Nuka chiropractic. It wasn't the space that I created. It was literally me being present with the person in front of me. And when I realized that that was the greatest value that I could bring, things in my practice got really interesting, because people didn't need to come back anymore. And the reason why they didn't need to come back anymore is because I actually spent the time and energy and attention that I needed to spend with them, and they taught me skills that I had that I wouldn't have known if I hadn't interacted with them. Typically, a Nuka chiropractor, when they would spend 15 minutes with a client, that was the amount of time that they needed to assess somebody, adjust them, and then, take any notes that they needed to, and then get ready for the next client. Typically, that is about a $60 service in Austin during the time that I was practicing. And so basically, people would come in and I would spend not 15 minutes with them, but anywhere from, 1 hour to 4 hours, because we were doing the work. And yes, that means that other people got bumped or we had to reschedule, and it was not a traditional type of practice, but we got the work done. People were flexible. You can only talk about places that you've been. I've been a lot of places in the psychological realms. I've traveled all over the world. I've had a lot of experiences. I wouldn't share something that I hadn't already experienced and had a strong connection with, and know that it can aid in some sort of understanding. So some of the ways that I've been working on sharing my services digitally since 2017, I feel like they're so much more valuable than they ever have been before, which is why I feel empathetically driven to share them with you. Right now, there's so many people that I feel like are in need of somebody to be reflecting, and with no expectations and no judgment, I provide that space. So I just want to let people know that if that's something that you need, I'm really good at creating that kind of a space. I'm going to just share my website with you so that you can understand how to get some support if you need it in this time. I have now getting into the forecasting. In this forecasting energy, if you want to let me know in the comments how this worked for you, I intend on coming back again when the moon moves back into Aries, so you can tell me how this kind of helped aid in your thoughts. The moon will be in Aries, and it will be full on again. That happens 420 to 422. And I know that this is a long chat that we're having right now, so if you've made it this far, I appreciate you. Leave me a thumbs up in the comments to let me know that you got this far, so I know that you're enjoying this. I just feel like it will really be beneficial for you to be able to try to understand what happens as we go through these cycles. So when the moon moves into Aries, it's going to be hitting the Sun and Mercury and Chiron. So we have a lot of energy going there, where the Sun is the childlike innocence, and it's the playful nature, and it's creative because it is ruled by Leo. And it's fiery, like the Sun is in Aries. And it's also, Mercury is in Aries as well, and so Mercury rules our communications, and it's also our intuition and intellect that just comes in from the ethers, because it's Mercury, the messenger of the gods. And it's also deals and communicating and marketing, and it's also the house of the siblings. With Chiron there, it's our wound. And so I feel like this energy is going to be really hitting the energy of like our desire to exist, because Chiron in Aries is symbolic of like a wound around the right to just exist. So I feel like we're all going to be feeling kind of that energy of like, I want to show up as this, all this work that I've done, this new energy, but how do I communicate it, and how do I do it in a way that I really feel like I'm showing up for myself in the way that I want to. And then we'll have the moon move into Taurus, and that is going to be with Uranus. Uranus is there, and Uranus is a firebolt of electricity, and it doesn't want anything to stay the same. It's very spontaneous. It's also a rebel, and it's a revolutionary, and it's in Taurus, which is really doesn't like change, but will do it if it makes sense, but it doesn't like change very much. And so having Uranus there is really asking to make these changes. And it's also for beauty. It's also for everything that Taurus represents. It's the home, it's security, it's nature, it's art, it's luxury. We will also have Mercury move into Taurus on 427, which will be cool because it'll move out of Aries and will be going from more communications of like egoic type of energy like Aries, but more moving towards the energy of Taurus, which is art, lots of art. The moon then will go into Gemini. We will have the moon in Gemini. This is now 422 to 427 it's in Taurus, and then 425 to 427 it is in Gemini. When the moon is in Gemini, it will be activating Venus, which is there, which is the ruler of Taurus. And so more art, and more siblings talk, more communications, more energy going that direction. At the end of the month, we will finish where we started, which is the moon being in Cancer with the north node of the moon. And then the last couple of days of the month is Leo energy, which is really fun because I feel like is going to leave us on a creative note for the end of the month. And this is where I'm going to stop, because I know that was a lot to think about, but I just wanted to give you a little bit into the energy so you can really like maybe plan if you're trying to figure out what's next, what's coming. That is the best that I can do for you, at least. And I hope that it made sense. I hope that it resonated with you.